rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
Welcome back. This is a really cool episode. Paul J. Daly, my friend, pre-COVID. We'll get into a bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about imperfection. We've both been through it. I'm going to hit you with some questions, but I want to tell the audience a really quick Paul J. Daly story. A friend of ours connected the two of us. He was like, "You guys got to meet." And it was just before the pandemic. I was sitting in my office. I reach out. We end up having lunch. And it really changed. It's the reason why this podcast exists today, because it was an idea I had. And you sat across the table from me. You had just sold your company, starting an agency. You were doing all of these recordings, talking to cool people. But you said, "Do you have a vision board? What is your vision for this? You just got to get out and do it." And I'll never forget that, because it really pushed me to say, wow, look at this son of a bitch doing this. He's out there. He's stubbing his toe, but man, he is grinding. So you go through life and you meet people, and it's cool to be able to come back and show gratitude to those people. So a big thank you and some gratitude for you, Paul, to start this. Welcome. I can't wait for my listeners to really get to know you a little bit.
Oh my God, that brought me right back. I'm glad.
Crazy.
I'm glad you did it. And I think
it was Small Plates, right? Or it was the old Dorsey's, or
oh my gosh, where the heck were we? It feels like a different lifetime.
It was Armory Square.
Yeah,
but it was pre-COVID. It was a different life.
It was a different life, and I think like your journey, just explaining it that way. By the way, I have my cool Chris Panadianco hat. I got my Rebel hat on.
My man,
it's awesome. It's
Rebel
right
MKT, biggest sponsor of the show.
Yeah, number one, fully funded by, right?
Yeah, they provide nothing actually, but they pay for the software.
But the great logo. Great.
Thank you, buddy.
I love it.
I mean, I look at this guy. I was gonna wait till later, but you're the king of swag.
We have a lot of swag. It's just fun. Like you can't see it over here, but like my office, I wanted it to feel a little bit like retail. So like I have like shirts hanging on nice wooden hangers lined up. I have sneakers lined up like you could buy them. I just I don't know. I just love retail. And so, but I like swag. For me, it's a reminders thing. And I say that a lot. Like I like wearing things that remind me of beliefs and what I feel. And that start conversations. Like one of the shirts that I wear a lot now says "Love people more than you love cars," and it has to do with one of the companies I'm building. But it, like, whenever I'm traveling, I wear that shirt, and on planes, it's just no less than a dozen conversations or comments walking through airports. But back to you did the podcast, right? You did it, and it never goes as planned. It always takes longer than you think. But in the end, that's what happens with everybody, right? And it's the lie of the internet, the many lies of the internet. But one of them is that like everything happens fast, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in this with listeners and viewers, and it's easy. Like I don't know, man. This pumps me up that we're here right now, and it's that far ago.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is two different worlds. Marketing's different, advertising different, podcast. Everybody has a podcast now. So, I was like one of the last people to jump into this, but, being able to sit on the sidelines and see and root for someone like you that, I want to get into a few questions, but you have humble beginnings. And again, if you don't know Paul, his story is amazing. From 2003 to 2018, the Rusty Van company. You operated out of a rusty old van. You had 15 years of grinding in the automotive industry, and you sold your company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk a little bit about that. I mean, that was an up and down grind, imperfection, screwing things up,
my gosh,
succeeding.
That's all it was. I mean, it's kind of, as an entrepreneur, that's all it still is. Sam Altman said it, articulated so clearly. I don't know what it was in an interview probably like 6 months ago. And he said, like, one of the biggest predictors of success in an entrepreneur is their ability to handle a constant flow of bad news. Right? And that really is what entrepreneurship is. It's just like bad things happen to you all the time. And the Rusty Van, right? It wasn't a Rusty Van for all those years, but I started in a Rusty Van. I worked at a dealership, never walked in a used car dealership or at any car dealership in my entire life, because that's the kind of, like, we bought $200 vehicles off the side of the road kind of family. And so I'd never even been in a car dealership in my early 20s. Got a job as a service advisor because I had met the owner at a church thing, and I didn't even know anybody like who owned anything growing up. Like I didn't know owners of businesses, I didn't know entrepreneurs, I didn't know general managers, just nobody. Like we were very blue collar. My dad was a phone installer back when you used actually wired phones in Philly. The first person I knew that had manager in their title was my shift manager at Burger King. And I was like, oh, they're a manager. You know what I mean? But regardless, so I met this dealer. I got a job as a service writer, started loving the energy of a dealership, so interactive, so based, like I love people things, and started a reconditioning company, and then just started messing up, reading books. I still have it. It's right behind me. You can't see it if you're just listening, but it's Small Business for Dummies. And that's the copy of the book that I bought when I was like, all right, I'm going to start a business. And that's, you couldn't Google it back in the day for those of you.
Or YouTube it. There was no YouTube.
Oh, there was
how-to
absolutely
videos.
No. I literally had to learn how to do a skill, and there was nowhere to check. It was like like I repaired vehicles, made vehicles look nicer for used car dealerships. And it's so easy to forget. Like there was a time when you couldn't look at, like there was no book in the library.
You had to go to the library.
There wasn't even what I did. There was no book in the library.
Yeah.
It didn't exist. Now you can learn whatever you want. But yeah, Small Business for Dummies, and I bought QuickBooks, which they had to mail to me. And I had to load in my CD-ROM drive. and I just remember. So
well, at least it wasn't a floppy disk.
No, but we were close. That computer had a floppy disk drive in it. And it was like name of company. I'm like, check. Next. It's like EIN. I was like, I know what that is. And I have one. Next.
There you go.
And it was like chart of accounts. And I was like, do they mean like customers? Like, what is that? Right. And then I realized there's this whole thing called accounting that underpins being able to use QuickBooks.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was just a lot of that.
Where did the love for, you said the energy in a dealership is contagious. Where did the love for cars and, just being a part of that industry, where did that come from?
It didn't come from a love for cars, I guess. I like cars. I like them a lot more now just because I know more about them, but we didn't grow up with like stuff. So like car was a strict matter of function. I never was attracted to expensive cars and pictures of Lamborghinis on my wall, none of that. I just, again, there's not a love for cars. It's a love for the fact that cars are a center point for most important things in our lives, right? Wow. They move families around. They're parts of weddings and graduations and people getting to and from work and people just doing interesting things. Like this was in a town called Oswego, New York, which is, about 30 miles north of Syracuse, very, very kind of like rural, and a lot of people worked. And to me, I didn't grow up like around a lot of vocations. So like, I thought people did interesting things and they would come in for service and I would always get stories. Oh, like I was doing this and my truck broke from this. I met technicians and it just seemed like the place where people's regular lives just kind of like gathered. And in service department, it's always like an issue, right? People show up because there's a problem. And this might my personality and my demeanor. Like I just thrived in that environment. Like I like helping people. I like making people happy. I liked having a team of technicians, even though I knew nothing about cars. The dealer principal, I was like, I don't really know anything about cars. He's like, I have technicians that know how to fix cars. He's like, I need somebody that's good with people. So I was like, okay. And yeah, so that's kind of how it cultivated. And then it went from service, and in my own business, I just got to know all the other departments of the industry. And now I will legitimately say, the very best human beings that I know, the best leaders, the people who invest most in cultivating their people who are most obsessed about giving good service and hospitality. That list for me is full of car dealers, which is the opposite of what the stigma is. And I can genuinely say I have 4 kids, and my 4 kids now have grown up with exposure to car dealers en masse, right? I take them travel with me when I speak sometimes. And I can tell you, if they were in a town or a place where they were unfamiliar, where they felt afraid, where they felt like they needed help, they would probably go to a car dealership before they would go to a police station. If they saw the two, they would be like, I'm going to go in the dealership because I know there are good people in there that'll help me.
That's awesome.
That's the reality.
It is a stigma. I think it goes back to service industry. Any type of service. I went through college and, in my early career, waiting tables, bartending, where things don't go right. And, you have to make an experience for someone, and it's looked down on in some cases. But I think it taught me a lot of, from early childhood, I had my lessons on a farm, but adulthood, it taught me how to get along with people. It taught me how to service people and think about them before yourself. And if you do a good job there, the money will come.
There's an
I
instant,
think,
well, that's the cool thing about bartending and waiting tables. I spent a lot of time waiting tables all through college, and there is like a pretty instant reward for doing a great job oftentimes.
yeah,
When you're bartending, waiting a table, right? How did you solve the problems? How did you handle the friction? How did you make people enjoy themselves despite whatever else was going on? How do you present yourself? How do you talk to people? How do you understand the dynamic of what's going on between two people that are at the table, right? Like, if you think about it, the human element of waiting tables and the fact that you can be instantly rewarded or near instantly at the end of the meal via a tip for how well you were able to navigate that, it's actually pretty profound. Like, I can't think of anywhere else where you're that instantly rewarded for your ability to navigate social situations.
I learned there too. We had, right before I met my wife, we worked at a restaurant here in Orlando, and the guy always said, I don't care what you have going on outside these doors, but when you walk in, you leave it at the door. And it's like that being, again, and we'll get into it here. You're a CEO, you're a leader, you have people's lives in your hands and their careers. And if you come in, and I see it every day, I've had bad days and I've learned, and if I wake up in the morning and I'm in a bad mood, that changes the dynamic for everybody else in the environment. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
You say this, and I love this statement you made. Connecting on a human level is undefeated. Yeah. How has that been shaped throughout your career, and obviously now into the different businesses you have?
Connecting on a human level always goes beneath whatever is on the surface. And I think there's always something under the surface. One of my like professors in the years of college I went to said, the heart of the matter is always a matter of the heart. And that kind of sticks with me. And that is that human connection driver in me, because regardless of how someone's behaving, how they're negotiating a deal, how they're buying something, how they're selling something, how they're acting in any moment, there is a human element driving that. And you don't know if it's a situation at home. Oftentimes it's just a dialogue that's going on in your head. Like you and I right now, we're having a conversation, and then there's another conversation we're both having with ourselves. And that's always going on. That's the human element. And if you can connect with that other conversation that's going on in someone, you're always going to have their attention. And if you do it well and you do it empathetically, they're always going to trust you more, because they understand you're looking at the person, not the title, not the situation. And so this has served me, and I think it serves anyone who pays attention to it, whether you're a marketer, whether you're in business, whether you're a father, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a bus driver. It doesn't matter. Like, the people who really impact other people's lives are the ones that understand the human connection is the actual connection that moves the needle, and not the practical connection. You know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Yeah. And so, like, you all probably seen it before, right? It's pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid are your very most basic needs, right? So it's like safety, right? Like, because you would seek out safety before you'll seek out food, right? Because if you die, then you can't eat anyway, right? And then it goes like food, and then shelter, and then you move up. Then at the top of it is like self-actualization, which is like thinking like you now have all the other things taken care of in your life: your food, shelter, family, right? Encouragement, emotional stability. And then you can like start to dream a little bit and be like, oh, what could I possibly be? And the human connection part is thinking of those things and speaking to those levels. And in marketing, I always say, like, if you can connect with someone, as far down the pyramid as possible, the most basic needs you can connect with, that's the human connection. That is actually, you're never going to be able to beat those things, no matter, how great your design is or whatever. So that's kind of how I think through that.
You've done that. And, so you've written a book, The Automotive Manifesto. You started an agency, which I've watched the journey of it being building your own standalone studio and office and growing your team up on Tip Hill.
Yeah.
So that's Congruent. You've got Asotu, Automotive State of the Union, which is now AsotuCon in its third year, a couple weeks away. Yep. We were talking a little bit before we hit record, and, the insanity there. You have a partner, Kyle, which you two are, it's awesome to watch the two of you and what you do. You've got Contagious Auto that you're building. you go back to getting down, and I'll tie this together.
Sure.
You've done all of these things. You've got all of these people depending on you, all whether they're employees or venues or guests. When you get down the funnel in the human connection, you start to feel a sense of responsibility. How has that changed from 2018 when you sold your first business to now? Wow, you've got all of this going on. How has that changed for you?
I still feel a very immense weight of responsibility to everybody who I'm partnered with or works at one of the companies. Immense amount of responsibility. And I think what's changed between then and now is I have more of an understanding that taking care of the team as a whole has to be just a little more important than taking care of the individual. And what I mean by that is that if there is no company, right, because we work, right, this is a vocation, it's nobody's hobby, right? But if that isn't healthy and that isn't thriving, then I lose the ability to take care of individuals pretty quickly. And my focus, like back to Maslow, my focus, if we're having trouble financially and we're navigating problems, the more we are, the lower down the pyramid I have to think. And now I'm trying to like fight to take care of people's practical needs instead of the more like the deeper needs. So I've changed in the way where I think more practically about business. The business side, the operational side of business is not my strong suit. Again, like the people side is what I naturally gravitate to. So the business side, financial side, the profitability side is always at war kind of with the dreamer in me and this idealistic wanting to take care of people. So between then and now, I've definitely had a lot of reality checks because people think when you sell a company, like all your problems are solved. It's like they're not, especially when you roll them into like the next act.
Yeah.
Right. You actually up the stakes on all the things. And so like that's changed a lot. And, Gary Vaynerchuk, who I know you pay a lot of attention to, I do as well, has something in mind. And this is maybe a little more practical where he says hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest. I've adopted that more. And like I used to avoid tough conversations and avoid letting people go as if it was a very uncaring and unkind thing to do. And what I've realized is the opposite. If someone's not a good fit, if someone isn't holding up their side of the agreement, it actually is doing damage to everybody else and damaging everybody else's opportunity that I've committed to grow. When people walk into the company, I'm like, my commitment to you is to provide you with opportunity. And my benchmark word is thrive when it comes to being an employer and having a team. It's like people who are thriving aren't on Indeed.com looking for other jobs.
Right.
They're not entertaining because they're thriving. It's not about how much money you make. Some people, it's more important than less. It's not about your work-life balance. Some people is more important than less. It's not about the actual work that you're doing, more important than less. And everyone has a different combination of those things and their importance. And everybody, even throughout life, that balance changes. So you can never like peg it. But if someone feels like they're thriving, they're happy. And when I don't, when I'm not direct in addressing issues, when I'm letting people stay that really should be somewhere else, then I'm killing my ability to have everybody thrive. So that's definitely been a big change over the last 5 to 7 years.
That's so
and I still have a long
impactful.
way to go.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, the follow up is what are a couple of things that you're like, you get a lot of accolades. People know you. I noticed you don't do a lot of one-on-one interviews where you're on the opposite side.
No,
It's mainly you're always bringing the story and telling the story of other people or bringing people together and connecting them and letting them go. So it's very cool because I've had the opportunity to sit with you and hear these things. But for other people that you're a showman, you're a gatherer of people and ideas. What are a couple areas that you're like, I get accolades for this, or people don't realize, but I really wish I could do these two things better?
I wish. Oh man, it's a long list. I mean, from a very practical standpoint, I wish, or I want to continue to become a better business person. Again, like I said, like the profitability is always a challenge for me, and a lot of companies, and I've had to learn to hedge that, right, with business partners and trying to be more aware. And I am growing, and but definitely I need to be a better business person.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at it. I've worked for people that are amazing business people, but they suck with people.
All the time.
And yeah, so it's hard.
And I'm
'cause
not
then you
saying
have
that,
people,
and I'm not even saying like I'm not judging that and saying like it's bad to be that way. Like
yeah,
some people are just like, they're just like textbook business people, and they're like, it's just business. Like, I'm not thinking about feelings. We're here to make money.
yeah,
We're all together. I want you to make money. I want to make money. And if we're not making money, then like that how do you feel about this doesn't even
yeah.
trigger. Like, I envy those people in some ways, because I'm like, look, you seem really
They go
fine
about
with
their
the way
day.
you're doing.
Yeah,
You're following the law, right? Like, you're being fair, right? Like, being fair and being kind aren't always the same thing,
correct. That's
So
a hard one too, especially now. I look, I think I've changed, and I'd love your opinion on this. I say it a lot. When my kids were born, when my sons were born, things changed to where service-minded, the service leadership is where it became, because I'm like, whoa, okay, it's not all about me. It's other people. And it took kids to knock me out of that.
yeah.
And so how have kids changed your life?
Oh my gosh. I can't even separate that anymore. My oldest is 17. He's actually
Oh my
sitting
gosh.
in an office next to me. He's been pretty much a professional editor since he's been 14 or 15. And so he's like a 17-year-old with like 5-6 years experience in editing. And he's like, he graduated high school a year and a half early because we homeschool. He gets to travel. He gets to meet all these really amazing people. Like, he's hanging out with like, the people that I get to roll with now in my mid 40s, right? Like
Right.
Jesse Cole, the Savannah Bananas, and about
Yeah.
to be with Will Guidara, the author of Unreasonable Hospitality, and all these dealership owners who are like billionaires. Like, he just thinks of the world in a totally different way. Then I have 2 daughters, who are 15 and about to be 13. And then we have like a little guy who's only 4. And, kids, they make me think about consequences a lot. And very many times, like, they have a very different upbringing than I had, very different than my wife had, in a lot of ways, right? Because, we just had a little more financial freedom when we sold the business, or take some of the pressure off. But prior to that, it was like, I don't know, I grew up living like paycheck to paycheck, and like entrepreneurship is like a lot of that. But I've learned about the things that you're doing now for them. Like, you're not going to see the result of that, better or worse, for a decade plus, and maybe even beyond. I start thinking about how I handle situations in the moment, and I'm so grateful that it's just, honestly, it's a gift from God that I can even think about it in those moments. Like, how I handle this situation is going to affect how this one of my children is going to handle this with one of my grandchildren. And so they've just taught me to think in the future. And, they say the older you get, or like when you're a pro football player, the more you play, they say the game gets slower. And I feel like I'm starting to see the beginnings of that in life and parenting and business. Just like, I feel like the game's slowing down just a little bit, where now instinct kicks in a little more than it used to. And I'm able to immediately like read the field and be like, oh, you know what? I know that linebacker's looking that way, but I feel like as soon as the ball snaps, he's going to go the other way. And then they do. And you're like, so they've changed the game in that way. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but I don't know.
It's a great answer though, because I've gotten to see it. If you watch, if you follow you on social media, you see those trips where you've got your kids with you. It's one of the things I'll never forget. Adam Weitzman had something posted once. It was a long time ago when his daughter was really little, and it was before he blew up as a entrepreneur and social media star. But he took his daughter with him somewhere, and he made a post about it. I replied to it. I said, man, it was 7 or 8 years ago, so my boys were really little, and I saw that and I was like, that's what I want to be able to do.
Yeah.
So now going out to lunch, I start to talk to them about things in marketing, and they're almost there. They're 9 right now, but they're more interested in Beyblades and Pokemon and wrestlers than anything else.
Yeah.
Paul, one of the cool things that you got to
let me just say something about that before you ask the next thing. I try to take my family as much as I can. And I think when people see that, you think of quickly the inconveniences. And I grew up thinking that children were an inconvenience. honestly. Like we had 2 kids. I was like, we're so done. We're not having any more kids because all the inconvenient things are going to start. We can no longer sit in a booth, right? Huge. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to buy a bigger car, all the things. And the truth is children are a major inconvenience. Taking them with you on a trip is a major inconvenience. You have to book travel. You have to worry about like, oh, what opportunities might pass by because I have a kid with me and I can't just go and do. So it's not without any work to take your kids with you, but I can tell you a little bit on the other side, and I'm not fully on the other side of it yet. But what that does for your relationship with your children and what gift that is to open their mind to how the world works. Like that, they don't teach that in any school. This is how the world works because you can't learn that in any school. Like you can talk about principles, you can talk about vocation, but when you're navigating the world, and I mean, not just like going to a restaurant, you learn about it there, but when you're getting on a plane, you're taking a car trip, you're meeting with professionals, you're navigating different situations, your kids are overhearing conversations. All of a sudden they're learning how the world works. And when they learn that, it's worth every bit of inconvenience or money that you have to spend to do it. I just want to put that out there because people are like, oh, I can't do it because of this, and that. It's like, no, it definitely takes more work and money. It slows you down.
It's such I'm glad you brought that up because I look at it, and even going out to dinner, we stopped at 3. We went from man to zone.
3's good.
So now,
Three's
but
a good
you get
number.
to 4, and now we've always talked like,
how old's your youngest?
My daughter will be 7. So
you got plenty of time. Like our mutual friend Jeremy Callie, right? Like he went in late, and his like next to youngest is like 14, and then he has a 4 or 5-year-old. Actually, he's the one that made Sarah and I be like, I think we could do it.
We've talked about that because our boys pair off, and my daughter's far beyond smarter and more self-sustaining. She makes breakfast for the boys. Those two, if something happened to Andrea and I, they'd be sitting there waiting for someone to feed them.
Yes.
Stella can actually take care of herself, but
so much easier.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, it is so much easier to have a kid when you're older. You are way less stressed about all the stuff that you were super stressed about. Your older kids can help. It's been pretty amazing.
All right. So you motivated me to get this podcast. The next time we talk, I'll have a 4th child.
That's the real win.
I was really looking for like a 16-year-old.
We need more good people having children. Like we need more of the good people. Everybody.
This is going to be like a draft, though, like an NFL draft. I'm really looking for like 16, has a license, is smart, can cook, can babysit. I mean,
it's pretty good. Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's not happening. You had a springboard moment, and it was involved with Gary Vee. You've mentioned him a lot. There's been a lot of content out there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it was really one of the coolest things. And then the follow-up beyond that is you're still heavily involved with him. And what has that meant for you?
So I'll start at the beginning. I didn't know anything about marketing. I saw Gary Vaynerchuk at an event in New York City that I only went to because I knew the other 2 speakers. It was Dave Ramsey and Seth Godin and some other guy I never heard of. It was called Business Gets Personal. They only had the event one time. And I was like, I'm going to take my team for my first company, Image Auto. We never did a retreat right? I had just barely scraped together. I was like, I think we need leaders now. We have like 20 people and I'm like answering every question. So I put together a leadership team. We went to this event. I saw Gary. He blew my mind with his practical wisdom and ability to just say things. So I just started following him on Twitter and social content, like voraciously consuming everything that he made and watching him and listening and implementing some of the things that he was saying. He did a live event. I went to that. He then offered like this thing where you could go to Vayner offices for a day and like he would be there for an hour and his exec team would like teach you about how they do things. It was 10 grand for a day, which was more money than I could ever imagine spending to go somewhere for a day. I called my wife and she was like, I mean, if you really think that this is going to be like the next step, then like, I trust you do it. And I was like, oh gosh. So I remember the $10,000 charge came through on the company Amex and like, I didn't get anything else, like no email. Cause it like, they roll fast, right? We're doing this thing and no email. I was like, oh my gosh. So either way, I went to that, started building relationships in the organization, little by little, built more relationships. And then I met a man named James Orsini at one of Gary's events, who was the COO. I didn't know it at the time. We were just talking. I found out he was the COO. He emailed me a couple weeks later and said, hey, we're doing this mentorship program. We're not announcing it. We want to get a few people through, but basically we're going to partner with you to help you build your company over the next 3 years. Senior execs involved, Gary's involved, and you should apply. 90 people applied. They picked 3. I was one of the 3. And the day I got a call from Gary's assistant, Tyler, at the time, and Tyler now, he runs, what is Tyler running these days? Oh, he runs VFriends. No, not VFriends. Oh, what is he in charge of? 1:37 p.m. And so Tyler calls and is like, hey, Gary wants to know if you can talk with him at 3:00. So the answer to that is yes. It's like, it's amazing. And literally an hour later, the CEO of the company who bought my company called out of the blue saying, hey, we're interested in buying your company. That was both on the same day. And so, yeah, same exact day within hours of each other. So Gary was like, hey, we really want to work with you. We're excited to work together. So I embarked on this Vayner Mentors journey where I was in New York City a lot at VaynerMedia headquarters. I told them about selling the company. They were like, we'll have our legal team look at your agreement. They were like, it's a good deal. You should take it. We'll help you build an agency. And I just got a front row seat to how a company at that caliber and an entrepreneur at that caliber operates. Learned a ton, learned how you can build a business with a people first mindset. Gary is like one of those people who has executed a very profitable business, very successful business, not on the backs of other people, but on the back of amazing company culture and people focus. And these days I still go there. The real value of that whole thing wasn't the time I got to spend with Gary, but it was the time and the relationships I built with the executive team and even the junior team and the interns at that time. And now they're all in charge of everything, right? They run VFriends, they're president of Team Gary and all that stuff. And
I worked with Sasha Group. They're amazing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And Sasha now is undergoing its own transition, and James Orsini was president of Sasha. And now he's back with VaynerMedia, like standing up new business verticals. And I realized like, I'm just getting older now.
Right.
I'm just getting older.
Get off my grass.
Yeah.
So fast forward again, you mentioned Jesse Cole. He's been, watching his rise.
What a story to watch.
Oh
man.
my gosh. Unbelievable. I can't wait until I get to a place where I can take my sons to see one of those games, just the experience. And that's what I want to kind of end on that. We're going to hit some questions here, rapid fire, but Will Guidara.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I knew who he was. I saw on the McKinsey, and I don't know why I was on McKinsey's website, but they had his book, Unreasonable Hospitality. And so I said, this looks interesting. Let me grab it. I worked in the restaurant industry. I couldn't put that thing down. I finished it in one day. And then I posted about it, and I hadn't seen much on LinkedIn. And our boy, Al Kutri, reaches out. He's like, dude. And I haven't talked to him in 7 or 8 years.
I was just on a call with him moments ago.
Were you?
Yeah.
He's a character.
Yes.
But Will Guidara is going to be the keynote speaker at AsotuCon. And I want to talk a little bit about that. But this sense, and I think that book and what I know of you and how you've run your business and how you look at people has really, it's taken off. And I mean, you were kind of doing that before anybody else. How do you feel about this progression? And then obviously that the littlest of things, and you see it. And so people don't know this. I sent you a hat. You sent me back a t-shirt. I mean, dude, seriously. This thing was wrapped. It comes in a branded envelope that is beautiful. You open it, it's got all this stuff in there. You got QR codes for a playlist, a t-shirt. I mean, my shoelaces. What is this? Unreasonable Hospitality, Will Guidara, Jesse Cole, experience. What does it mean to you?
All it is, it ties back to my thesis of human connections undefeated. I mean, if you look at Jesse and what he does at his games and why people can pay attention for 3 hours straight, that's a 2-hour baseball game and probably 4 hours, an hour before and an hour after, because he pays meticulous attention to what is going to connect with people on a human level, right? And even the games they play between innings, like they find very human things and they make it fun. Like the world's slowest race, where they line up 7 babies and they have them race, and like everyone can relate to the baby and the mom, and like it's a race. And Will Guidara, on the other hand, does the same thing. He said, how can we connect with the things that people really want when they show up for a meal? What do they really want? What are they really going through? And knowing that you can't do the same thing for everyone because everyone is different. You know, he talked about this in a podcast we just got to do with him. He said, you know, like when we're going to give you this beautiful champagne toast to start your meal. He's like, that's nice. He goes, but I don't like to start my meal with champagne, you know? And so I think that's what it is. And so Will obviously had the best restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park. And now he's literally written the book on hospitality. And he believes his premise is that everyone can choose to be in the hospitality business. And what that is everyone can choose to connect with people on a human level in a way where they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel cared for. And if you can accomplish that, I don't care what your product is, like you're always going to win. I don't care if it's not even a product or in business. Like, let's just talk about like your relationship with your significant other, right? Like I want to grow in expressing that to my wife because I definitely am guilty of like lumping her in with me. And if I want to like, oh, well, I'm going to let the other person work for, I'm going to get out of their way. All of a sudden, like when we got married, funny story, we're walking on the sidewalk and I literally like pushed her out of the way so a complete stranger could go by. And it took me a minute. Well, it took me more than a minute. Like, why is she offended by that? Like, don't we want to get out of the way? She's like, no, you're prioritizing that person over me. Like I like to get out of people's way, but I'm not the same person as you. Right. And so all that to say, Will, Jesse, I didn't actually put these things together until you just asked the question though. Like the human connection part of it is still at the core of their message. And it's why they're successful. That's why
we're writing your book, buddy. We're writing volume 2.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the Automotive Manifesto book was literally that was the premise before I even put it in those terms. It's just like human connection. Selling cars.
Well, you've done it, and it's been awesome to watch. I'm gonna give you a couple rapid fire questions here. You're a Philly guy. Best team in Philly right now.
Oh my gosh! Do I need to put the jersey on? It's always.
I saw your. The
best team is always the Eagles in my mind, right? And I know people would just. I have a hard time.
Did you see the end of the Knicks game? Knicks game?
I have a very hard time with pro basketball.
So do I.
I used to love it. I grew up on Charles Barkley, man. Like he was.
That was when basketball was basketball.
Exactly. I'm gonna cause some trouble here, but like, man, I've never seen so much drama come from grown men in my life unless I was watching soccer.
Right. Yeah. Soccer, and I played both. And I look at it now. I mean, basketball. Every whistle. What are you doing?
Hands in the air. I just can't take it. I can't.
I will tell you this though. I grew up a Knicks fan, like the Knicks. They blew it. They had the series wrapped up 8 points. Maxey, the point guard for the Sixers, went ballistic at the end of the game, hitting three-quarter or half-court shots to force it into
watch that. See, that'll get me fired up still.
Game 5. Just watch the last 2 minutes of the game in overtime.
But I will still say the best team in my mind is always the Eagles.
Donovan McNabb. My favorite.
Oh, because he was from Syracuse.
Of course.
When I moved to Syracuse, I was like, why are there so many Eagles fans up here? They're like Donovan McNabb. I was like,
And even the Bills fans were okay with that because it was McNabb.
Yeah. Bills fans and Eagles fans are cool. There's a lot of similarities. I love that I live close to Bills who are very similar.
I'm not diving through a table unless it's pro wrestling, buddy. Who's the best Eagle of all time?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to go with, this has changed over the years, but as a kid, I might still hold this. I've never even thought about that. I'll give you top 5. I'm going to say Reggie White.
Yes.
Brian Dawkins.
Yep.
I'm going to I have to put Nick Foles in there because he is the most loved Eagle of all time. He gave us a Super Bowl.
Ahead of Cunningham?
No, I'm not. This isn't in order. This isn't in order. Randall Cunningham, he was my quarterback when I grew up.
He was my Tecmo Bowl god.
Oh, he invented the running quarterback. Like he was the first guy. Oh my gosh. I have to put, Kelsey obviously is a legend, but that's he's almost like a pop culture legend now. It's getting to that point. But I have to say the guy that I'm going to buy his jersey this year because it's going to be his last year is Brandon Graham.
Oh, all right.
Now Brandon Graham from a stat standpoint is not the greatest Eagle of all time, but from a heart standpoint,
I like it.
As great a player as I've ever seen.
I like Brian Westbrook.
Oh, Westbrook too. Actually.
Is that your jersey?
If you're watching Brian Westbrook, You're on my
Yes.
list.
Yes.
This is the Asotu jersey. We had it in Philly in 2022.
And signed by Westbrook.
And Westbrook happened to be at the hotel, and I got him to sign the jersey. I had to explain to him. I'm like, I know this isn't your number. I know you're 36. You mean a lot to me. I know you have a horse farm. You're an entrepreneur. I know a lot about you. But could you please sign this number 22? It's not a player. And he did.
I love it. My sister owns a horse farm. I'll see if she can connect you guys, and we'll get you set up.
Awesome.
Best custom Nikes you own. Here we go. This guy's got everything behind him.
I'm going the ones I'm wearing. So these are like a canvas material. I was able to custom order them. They have like a little Asotu on the back.
I love it,
snap. Dude. But I like the ones that I customize personally myself, right? I did a little to these, and I have ones that like drew all over.
I love it. What do you think of it? So I'm an old Jordans guy, right? Like the Jordan 4s, Jordan 11s, all that. What do you think of Jordan brand?
I don't own a single Jordan thing. And when my son bought Jordans, I'm like, Jordans? Really? And he's like, yeah, why don't you like Jordans? I was like, because I don't really like the player. He's like, you don't like Michael Jordan? I'm like, Charles Barkley was my idol. I don't care if Jordan had better stats. I was like, I grew up in Philly. Nothing else existed in that era. My prized possession as a 12-year-old, my dad and I, we went to a basketball game, the only one we ever went to. Again, we really didn't have, and he told me I could buy the Charles Barkley. He saw me looking at it, and I know we didn't like have money. He was like, do you want that shirt? I was like, no. And I think it was like $17. And he bought it for me. And I was the kid that now like wore that shirt every single day. And it was like, it had like a full picture of Charles Barkley, like dunking and his two-handed dunk. And then it had like the side profile as well, like cool. Faded in. And that was I've
got a couple of Barkley rookie cards. Now my kids are getting into that.
Oh, fun.
Now you're probably going to think, where the hell did you find this out? Is Meant to Live the best Switchfoot song?
No.
What is and why?
Oh, I'll tell you the best album.
Okay.
Is Hello Hurricane, which is the first album they made when they ditched Sony BMG, and they're like, we're going to make an independent album, take a risk. They wrote 100 songs over 2 years, picked the top 10, put them on an album, and played the album live in a row. And so, I mean, every song of that album has a connection to me. But
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with that.
Very cool. Now, our buddy Matt Reed, I had him on, and
he's killing it right now, man.
Dude, how awesome is that?
He is just killing it.
Matt, I told Matt he's recruited more people for me than my recruiters have. The quality of people, and so in my background, you've got your sports stuff. I've got pro wrestling behind me. I'm a dork that loves it. And so I asked him, because he's a Macho Man Randy Savage guy. Who's your, if you're into it, who is your pro wrestler? Question one. And then question two is, what would be your entrance song?
Oh, so the only pro wrestling that I watched was definitely my early years. And that was back when it was Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Ultimate Warrior, the Bushwhackers, the
Road Warriors, man.
The secret move was like, it was a tag team, right? And the secret move was like, I'm going to shove the other guy's face in my armpit.
Yeah, Luke and Butch. They're still alive. Yeah.
I wanted, like, I had a lot of Hulk Hogan stuff as a kid. I had his little, like, 2-pound weights and the headband and the workout tape was like, eat your vegetables, say your prayers, and he would, like, do the curls. Come on.
Take your steroids.
But I didn't say that. But I think the one that, like, I thought was, like, super, super cool was the Ultimate Warrior. When I was a kid, I don't know if
that guy had absolutely no wrestling ability, but gosh darn it, he could entertain a crowd.
He looked so cool with the tassels and the makeup,
sprinting to the ring and ripping the ropes. And who does that? That's what you should do at the next Asotu Con. Yes. That's how you start. That's the start. So, Paul, thank you. I can't thank you enough, brother. What are the best ways? LinkedIn. Where can we follow you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. I used to do a lot on Instagram, but I've really just isolated that just from a time standpoint if I'm going to go all in on one platform. And LinkedIn has become a really cool platform. I have a website, pauljdaly.com, where you can kind of see what I'm doing right now. It's probably the best place. And then it links through the social profiles of the companies.
Built something that didn't exist. And it's been awesome to watch. It had a big influence on my career and my life. And I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time, and best of luck, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You make this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.